bit about the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. So right at the start, a bit of a disclaimer, this forum is focused on enabling inclusion and diversities of all kinds. We focus on the gender piece because this is, easily a diversity that stares us in our face. Like someone mentioned, usually the one half of us were not put there to sit on the bench. So we want a significant focus as a community on women and integration and inclusion of women in the workforce. So that's very significantly one of our focus areas. But we basically do work in the space of culture of inclusion across organizations, for integrating multi-generations, persons with disabilities, LGBTQ community, and also to promote all kinds of social-cognitive diversities, because a very significant part of the members are a subset of the Learning and OD Roundtable, which is largely HR, learning, OD, talent professionals. The WLFA brings together professionals from across Asia. We bring them in to be able to have conversations and dialogues which are relevant for us in the region. Thought leaders in the space, people who've written and authored books. But largely, we are focused on building capabilities because the WLFA forms part of the, like I said, the Learning and Organizational Development Roundtable, which is focused on developing capabilities for professionals. So we continue in that lineage to be able to do work in the space of mid-level women professionals, which are a treasure trove inside organizations because they've lasted a lot of the potential leakage in the pipeline. We focus particularly for women on both mindsets and skill sets. We help integrate all kinds of diversities using masterclasses and debates and discussions. We've always been virtual as far as the speaker series is concerned. And now a lot more of our WLFA Academy work is available, is essentially available for you virtually. So I would recommend strongly that those of you who are on board for the first time, do reach out to the organizers, reach out to Prudel and reach out to Shreya and ask more about the Women Leadership Forum of Asia Academy, which is now virtual and practically all the programs are available virtually. We've been pioneers in using theater for being able to drive reflection and learning, especially when we want people to question deeply held values, beliefs, and assumptions. Theater is such a powerful medium and we've used it all through. We have some signature products. The latest one that we brought out was called In the Times of COVID-19. So I recommend strongly, especially since this is Pride Month, that a lot of you reach out for the sensitization programs that we have for LGBTQ. There is a fantastic play called Come Out, Wherever You Are, followed by a discussion and dialogue. So reach out to the organizers if you want any of this to be performed or brought to employees within your own organization. With that, let's move forward. And here's the stellar governing council of the Learning and OD Roundtable, giving us a lot of wind below our wings here at the Women Leadership Forum of Asia as well. All great people, great, highly accomplished, iconic, very admired, and most of all have their head and their hearts in the right place. Doing some tremendous work. The Learning and OD Roundtable is a 10-year-old forum. The Women Leadership Forum of Asia has been here for the last 6 years. The Learning and OD Roundtable has over 25,000 members. The WLFA has about 11,800 members. So I'm going to recommend strongly that all of you all join this movement, which is led by pioneers of this kind. Adil Malia, of the firm. There's myself, and I'm the founder CEO of Capstone People Consulting. Srinivas Venkatram of Illumin Labs, Dr. Akhil Basrai, who doesn't know him, of Akhil Basrai Consulting, Dr. Prince Augustine of Mahindra, Manu Wadhwa of Sony Pictures, Rajesh Padmanabhan, who's a business transformation leader, Rajeshwar Upadhyay of Academy of Applied Emotional Intelligence, and Rajesh Kamath, who is from Chanakya Consulting and is also very well-known and well-regarded HR professional. So this is the group that actually guides, leads, inspires all the work that we do under the aegis of the Women Leadership Forum of Asia. Move forward. And now the webinar that we're all here to be able to talk about, the conspiracy of silence, domestic violence and women through the lockdown. So domestic violence is, and it's not only pertaining to the lockdown, but it has increased in the midst of the trials and tribulations of a pandemic. We have this ugly social malaise raising its head again in the midst of a lockdown. As if to say there weren't enough hardships, that this is one more thing that people are having to bear with, especially women. We wanted to be able to open up this conversation and dialogue, even as we saw the number of complaints go up through the lockdown. This is not an Indian trend, it is an international trend, which is really to say how badly women are treated practically all across the world. But we won't go into the category and the reasons and the where and the what whereof of these challenges. I want each one of you today to be able to view this subject and to be able to come into this conversation without having to identify or without having preconceived predispositions around calling out who the villain is in domestic violence. We want to be able to see these challenges and these issues as a social malaise. We're going to talk about it today because how can the journey of women empowerment be complete if she's so significantly disempowered across levels, across the society? And I'm hoping that today through our conversation, we will bust many myths associated with who are the women who actually are victims of this? Are women indeed the victims of this? Do they really deserve this if they've provoked it, or whatever is the version that various people have to be able to justify domestic violence? Is it any of our business to be able to talk about domestic violence that happens in somebody else's home? Is it not within the privacy of the relationship or the quality of the relationship for the two individuals to decide how they want to behave with each other? That if the women are willing to forgive this behavior, why are we having a conversation about it? Do we really have any locus standi to be able to bring up this conversation at all today? And so I'm going to invite each one of you to be able to come into this dialogue as human beings and not in the context of your gender. I want you to participate in this dialogue today without having preconceived notions on who is the aggressor and who is the victim. So we don't want to be able to call this out so early in the game. We also don't want to call this out and end the exploration and dialogue that we want to have through this conversation today. So we're going to ask many provocative questions. We're going to ask some very realistic questions. We're going to get multiple perspectives on this. And we want to be able to arrive at a decision at the end of this conversation, whether it's everyone's problem if someone is experiencing domestic violence in our society. We believe it's everyone's problem if someone's experiencing domestic violence in our society. And no matter whoever is the recipient of that domestic violence, whether it's a woman or a man or a child, do we as a society want to protest and be a voice against this? Do we as a society want to recognize that this is not just a malaise like we'd like to believe in the slums or in the lower echelons of society? This is very much a prevalent challenge across levels. And we will talk a bit about this when we show you the statistics, because I know for some of us this is hearsay. Some people have even called it out and told us that this may be false news and that it's happening everywhere else in the world, which is almost to say if it's happening everywhere else in the world, it's trending, so it's all right if it's happening here too. So I want us to be able to come in without any preconceived notions and participate as members of a society and have this conversation as members of a society that wants to be civilized and wants to treat everyone equally. So I think with that as an invitation, I'm going to start this conversation by being able to show you a video that maybe some of you have already experienced on the net. You probably would have seen this, but for those who haven't had the privilege to see it, if they do not have the privilege of seeing it, we're going to play this for you today so that you have an opportunity to be able to watch this video along with everyone who's on this conversation today. But before we do that, this very wonderful panel that has agreed to join us in this conversation and lead this conversation, each one of them an evangelist, an activist for women's rights, for equality, for a sane and stable society. First and foremost, I'm going to call out Adil Malia, CEO of the firm. He's an evangelist for women's rights and equality, does a lot of pro bono work, which a lot of people are not aware of, by providing legal advice to women and doing whatever he can in his capacity to protect women and children who are up against violence or any form of unfairness and inequality. Shalini Kamath is the founder and CEO of SK and Associates. She's a very strong activist and voice against violence against women. Anuradha Mishra, the head of talent and learning at Marsh and McLennan. Anuradha again is involved with various forums that are actively working in the domain of being able to support women who are experiencing domestic violence at home. Ansu Gupta is the founder of One Shoe Trust Media and is a marketing professional. She's also an activist and a very strong voice against domestic violence, and we'll hear more from her today. Priyanka Banerjee, we decided on each of our DNI forums to be able to include the voice of a millennial. Priyanka is a 24-year-old film director and is the founder CEO of Leo Girl Productions. She recently brought out a very popular short film, which has won many accolades and awards in a short period of time. She's the writer-director of Devi, for those of you who've seen this before, and is a very strong voice against any kind of atrocities to women. So I think with that, let's open this conversation by getting you to watch a video. This video was made by Nandita Das. I understand she made it on her phone. It was up in the social media and was very actively watched by people on WhatsApp groups. Let's watch this. It's called Listen to Her.
Yeah, it's much cleaner now. Just look at it. And I think we should save this as well. Yeah.
You know, an octopus has 3 hearts, and even if you cut out its head, it can still live for 1 more hour.
Really?
Yeah.
God, that's so cool. So listen, this is the best we can do remotely. Here.
Sorry, was it too loud?
Yes. Volume a little low, okay? I'm working.
I have to make the lock room.
Okay, guys, I'm back.
I go towards the center.
Yeah. Yeah, but send me the earlier presentations also.
Are you done with that call?
Upwards.
Black coffee bana do yaar. Huh?
Yeah.
No, that's true, but the calibration of their system, if that's not right, you know, whatever we may do, it's not going to make a difference.
Also, we
No, I completely understand.
practice that.
But
Then,
yeah, so it's no point, you know, even saying that then. Why don't you first finish your food? Huh? And chew, please.
I am.
Yeah. Okay. So just send me the files. Yeah, you just send me the files and then I'll look at it after my son sleeps. Hello. हाँ? Can you speak? थोड़ा जोर से बोलिए.
अब सखी संस्था से क्या
क्या? नहीं, wrong number. Yeah, so.
Mama, I'm done. Now can I please wave?
Yes. But not for too long, okay? My head really spins.
Okay.
हाँ. हेलो. मैंने कहा ना आपको कि रॉन्ग नंबर है.
दीदी बात सुनो ना मेरे को बहुत तकलीफ है. नहीं मतलब पहले भी थी, लेकिन अब भी भाभी बहुत ज्यादा तकलीफ है. बहुत बस ये कर रहे हैं वो. मेरे को अभी डर लगा, बहुत तकलीफ है. हाँ, आइए.
हेलो.
आइए.
हेलो. सुनो.
हाँ मैं आइए वो
देखिए. हेलो. सुनिए. देखिए. हेलो. सुनिए. हेलो.
किसका फोन है? हेलो, बोलना कौन है?
मैं
क्या है? बात करो ना.
केमिस्ट.
रॉन्ग नंबर.
पुलिस स्टेशन?
हाँ बोलिए मैडम।
जी देखिए, एक औरत उसको उसके हस्बैंड बहुत मार रहे हैं।
उसका नाम बताइए, पता बताइए।
हाँ, आप वहाँ पर जा सकते हैं क्या प्लीज? वो बहुत उनको अर्जेंट हेल्प चाहिए। मैं नंबर देती हूँ, प्लीज नोट करिए।
नंबर
790 317 3248। हाँ,
हम दे देंगे ये नंबर वो हेल्पलाइन को।
हाँ, अगर आप अभी किसी को भेज सकते हैं।
नहीं, फोन आते हैं हमारे पास, किधर जाएगा हम? हाँ,
आई अंडरस्टैंड, बट देखिए वो बहुत बुरी हालत में थी, वो चिल्ला रही थी, वहाँ पर एक छोटा बच्चा भी था। तो
मत सिखाओ मैडम कि हमारा काम हमको कैसे करना है, ठीक है?
सर मैं आपको नहीं बता। Yeah, no, just say that again, just the last line. I was listening. It's just that I didn't hear the last bit. You can just repeat it, right? Okay. No. We are not giving it to Chopra for sure.
Mama, when will you be free?
Just give me 20 minutes. I'll be done soon. Okay? So,
अच्छा, looks like the mangoes have arrived. Huh?
yeah, okay. No.
ये नासिक का एक बंदा है, he's delivering.
Yeah. हेलो?
हेलो, सुनाई दे रहा है क्या?
हाँ बोलो।
मदद चाहिए दीदी मेरे को।
हाँ
मदद करो दीदी।
सब कुछ बता।
मैं बताती।
धीरे धीरे।
आज सुबह मैं दीदी खाना खाने गई थी। 3
Get
घंटा
the door.
पड़ी थी मैं। वापस आई ना दीदी तो इतना गुस्सा हो गया, क्या बताओ आपको, इतना मारा मेरे को, मेरा सर।
Open the door ना।
You do it.
अरे
हेलो, सुन रहे हो क्या दीदी?
हाँ सुन रही हूँ।
पहले भी मारते थे, बहुत तकलीफ है दीदी। हर रोज का हो गया अभी तो। दर्द हो रहा है दीदी। छोटा बच्चा है, आज उसको भी लग जाती थी, वो लगते लगते बच्चा है उसको, मुझे बहुत डर लगता है, मेरा बच्चा है। आँख के ऊपर लग जाती थी, आँख बची है मेरी दीदी, पूरा चेहरा मेरा। मदद चाहिए, तकलीफ है दीदी, नहीं तो मर जाएगी मैं। बता दीदी, बड़ा हार्ट है, मेरा रोड पे दीदी भेजना।
I'm just going to let you all just absorb that for a bit, and because while that was dramatically enacted, this is sadly the reality of many women, and this situation's been highly aggravated through the lockdown. I'm going to start by sharing some statistics with you. These are validated research insights. They are available on the Niti Aayog site. So for those of you who want to be able to pick these insights, these are research. So for those people who believe that there is an exaggerated version of the quantum of domestic violence in India, or even the increase during the lockdown, I just want to clarify once and for all, this is anything but fake news. So move forward. I'll just keep sharing some insights for you, and those of you interested can take notes if you like. During the COVID-19 lockdown period, violence against women has significantly increased across the world: Australia, Brazil, China, France, UK, and also other countries. Physical violence against women is extremely widespread, with the intimate partner being the most common perpetrator of violence. Move forward. Globally, 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner, or sexual violence by any perpetrator in their lifetime. Violence against women remains a major threat to public health and women's health during emergencies. Move forward. The literature of domestic violence recommends that when men and women are employed, domestic violence tends to fall as interactions between the couples reduce. This is a sad reality, and this is what the researchers, the social researchers have found, that you actually, if you have both men and women working in the home. Because of reduced interaction, they're likely to have less friction, therefore lesser chances for domestic violence. Under the lockdown, interaction time has increased and families have been left without access to the outside world. Move forward. Previous research suggests that violence is a way for the man to assert his notion of masculinity. The current atmosphere of fear, uncertainty, food insecurity, unemployment may create feelings of inadequacy in men. All these factors are likely to worsen stress at home and make women the victim of these stresses. Move forward. The lack of access to friends, family, and support organizations is expected to aggravate the situation for abused women further. This point comes from the fact that most women don't know where to reach out for help if they are the recipients or the victims of domestic violence. The disruption of livelihoods and ability to earn a living, including for women, many of whom are informal wage workers, will decrease access to basic needs and services, can increase stress with the families, and has the potential to exacerbate conflicts and violence. Move forward. Violence against women can result in fatal and non-fatal injuries and serious physical, mental health problems like depression and anxiety, sexual and reproductive health problems, including sexually transmitted infections, HIV, unplanned pregnancies, and also resulting in death in extreme cases. Move forward. The National Commission for Women provides support and assistance to women in distress or experiencing domestic violence in India. They take a particular stance. You saw some of the helpline numbers that they've put out. And according to the NCW data, during the lockdown, violence against women has increased in India as well. It has received 123 complaints regarding domestic violence against women from 27 February to 22nd March, which was before the lockdown, and 250 complaints from 23rd March to 22nd April during the lockdown. You know, the jury is out on how many complaints they never received, because most people are known to not complain when they are the recipients of domestic violence. The NFHS 4 data shows that married women who have ever experienced spousal violence constitutes about 31.1% in India, with the proportion being 25.3%. I'm going to repeat that. The proportion being 25.3% in urban areas and 34.1% in rural areas. The actual reports of violence against women to the police or other agency are negligible. Please see them being highlighted. The report to police or any other agency are negligible. The underreporting of domestic violence cases to police and authorities is due to societal shame, stigma, and fear of repercussions, among other reasons. Move forward. And I think with that, I'm going to, even before I reach out to this very resourceful panel, I'm going to ask a question with your permission to the audience. So there's an audience poll question, and then I'm going to start asking you questions straight away. Sunit, can we have the first audience poll question? So everyone get ready. I have an audience poll question for you. There are going to be a couple of them that are going to come up during the course of our conversation here today. We've made it easy. It's a binary yes or no. So if you have a maybe, I'm afraid you're going to have to decide whether you want to put your answers down as yes or no. Can we have the first question coming up? Do you agree that educated and employed women are less likely to officially complain against domestic violence that they may be experiencing? Do you agree that educated and employed women are less likely to officially complain against domestic violence that they may be experiencing? Yes, no. Yes, so pretty simple there. Take about 30 seconds to respond if you want to think about it, whether is it a yes or is it a no. Do you think people who are educated and employed are less likely to complain officially about domestic violence? Okay, can we have the response in it? Right, you have like a staggering 60% yes, and 40% no. And I know this is a mixed bag, because you would expect women who are educated and who are emancipated, have an identity, are English speaking, employed, being financially independent, having the gusto and the assertion to go out and complain. And yet we're saying that a significant 60% will not complain, even if they are indeed recipients of domestic violence. And that's why we call this session the conspiracy of silence. So I'm going to get this off and move to my very outstanding panelists. And let me just put this question out to you first, Shalini. What is your reaction to this? I mean, we've asked a question here around educated women. Are they the ones who would hesitate the most? Also, if you have any insights that you want to share with the audience on all that we said around the statistics and the incidence of domestic violence having gone up during the lockdown. I want you to respond to the poll question. What is your reaction to that first?
So it doesn't come as a surprise to me. Just kind of hearing things and having observed over a period of time and, going through what we are seeing right now, it's very, very common, it's prevalent. A lot of educated, financially independent women face domestic violence and they do not talk about it. Some of it comes from own shame to say that, I'm in this relationship, some fault with me there is. Some of it comes because of a family push. There is that little to say, somehow manage it, don't bring shame to the family. Some of it is because you just get so used to a certain lifestyle that changing the whole dynamics of that is difficult. Sometimes it's because there are children involved. You don't want your children to be taken away because when you're at that status, the custody battles can be very, very difficult, right? So then you don't want to really lose your children. Some of it can be that you truly love the human being because that human being is actually not beating you all day long or every day of the month, right? Not. It happens in spurts. The rest of the time, the person could be very charming, very successful. You want to be with that person. You love the person, and then you feel to say, okay, it's that, like I said in my previous one, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. You love the Jekyll, and you're willing to tolerate the Hyde for whatever rest that balance that is there. So I'll give you two examples right at the beginning, and maybe that will bring something into context for you. I was talking to this wonderful, wonderful lady. She was married to an army officer's daughter. Educated, she was working. She was married to an army officer's son, married to an army officer's son. And within the first year of marriage, he started physically abusing her. She stayed in that relationship for 12 long years. And there were multiple reasons. So when I kind of probed and I was chatting with her, it was interesting to note that, at that point in time, her family was not in India. She was in India, but family was overseas. The family was going through a financial crisis. So she didn't want to put additional pressure on them to say that I'm going through this as well, right? Then she had a child. So then it was for the child because there is a child that is there. The individual would, she was educated. She could have easily walked out and reported. She couldn't do that. She went through it till finally, I think one day, it just became unbearable. I mean, she shared stories where she was having a haircut and she had to come back with half hair long and the other half cut because the husband said, you have to be here right now. So I asked her, why did you tolerate it for so long? Very innocent response was to say, I had seen a very difficult father as well. My father was not abusive, but he had a bad temper. So for the first few years, you just expect that, that's how men are. And then by the time it is too late and the rest of the family wouldn't support and you kind of get used to that life till she finally walked out. And when she walked out, finally, her first night she stayed with her maid in the maid's house. So can you imagine that sometimes there's genuinely no place to go to? Where do you go? If you walk out of that, where do you go? There is no other place. We don't have government shelters. We don't have homes which are provided for by the society where you can walk across to. Even if they are, they're not publicized that well. They're not of that standard, a standard that you're used to living. So it's a very complicated, it's a very, very tricky situation, and it is very difficult for a woman to take that stance and come out. Even statistics show that before a woman actually reports, she has been through an average of 7 attacks. So it is, this poll didn't come as a surprise to me.
Thanks for sharing this, Shalini. It's been incredible. And I know you come from real experience and real work that you do with women who are, essentially impacted with this terrible malaise. I'm going to take off from where you left off to be able to ask Ansu. You said on an average, most people, by the time they report, they've already been beaten up at least 6 or 7 times. I'm going to pick up from there and ask Ansu. Ansu, if you can come in to be able to answer 2 questions for us. One is that, do you think that this is a form of bullying that needs to be called out early in the game? And the ones who continue experiencing and enduring this are the ones who have not drawn the line early in the game. So just want your reaction to this. And, what is the reality in terms of what women are experiencing? Do they see this as bullying? What is the hesitation in not drawing the line early in the game? Because if you call it out as a transgression early in the game, there's less likely for this to be repeated. So tell us more about that dynamic, because you've dealt with so many live situations on this. You're on mute, Ansu.
Unmute.
You're on mute. You need to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Sujaya. See, Shalini just mentioned that there are typically 7 cases of beating before somebody actually, people who are still able to collect that courage, some of them never do, are able to walk up and do something about it. But beating is still, physical violence is still very deep down in the game, right? Let's just talk about bad behavior, which means that in a relationship of equals, we continue to tolerate bad behavior day in, day out. Not 7, but maybe 700 instances. Sometimes we don't even realize that we are being, behaved very badly too. It's rude, it's impolite. You wouldn't do that to your boss. You wouldn't do that to your colleague. You wouldn't do that to anybody else, right? And one of the things, probably the reason, like Shalini mentioned in the story that she was sharing, is that sometimes women just think, the males in the house have that right to behave like that, which they absolutely don't actually, from this societal conditioning. There is this whole privilege that they've got that they can behave any way they want to and get away with it. It starts very young, right? It starts very young with the kind of behavior that is allowed for boys and not allowed for girls. It starts from there. And a lot of times, simple acts of disrespect, we might not be able to call it violence, we might not be able to call it abuse, but that's where it starts. That's where somebody will start putting you down. And again, I mean, it's not like they will be bad throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. It happens, and then everything goes back to normal, and then it happens again, and then everything goes back to normal, and so it continues. And everybody is trying to test, how much can this other person take, right? So they're trying to test their boundaries, and it goes on increasing like that. So the first and foremost thing that especially women lose in this kind of a game is self-respect. They become so used to be treated like that. And it comes in various forms. It comes in many different kind of coercions. It comes in many different kind of verbal abuse, emotional abuse, distress. In the film that you showed, the very obvious case was that of the woman who was on the phone. Yeah. But the other obvious case was the abuse that Nandita was going through. Yeah. Both the women spoke up against it at the end. Right. But a lot of times, I mean, it is true. Sometimes it's not the relationship of equals, right? So I would say that's where it starts. It should be zero tolerance zone. I would say, after having heard so many stories time and again, that there are red flags right in the beginning that people either do not recognize, or they think, it's not bad enough. It's small. It's a small incident, so it's okay. But if you do not have a zero tolerance kind of a policy when it comes to this right in the beginning, then God knows where it can go.
Yeah, so agree with you, Ansu. I'm going to just take this over to Adil. And Adil, I don't know, I have mentioned this to you before that, in one of the previous organizations that I worked for, we had a large Women's Day celebration where we had almost 600 odd women attending Women's Day. And we had somebody from the legal team who came in and spoke to them. It was a half-an-hour session, which was Women Know Your Rights. And he was talking about the rights that women have despite having received their Stridhan and the rest of that. And he was talking about immutable properties and how typically there's a tendency to believe that the men in the family will inherit straight away. And he was talking about how you still have a right over them too. And then at the end of that conversation, he ended up saying to the women in the audience that, some of you may have a difficulty and you may want to, you may want to consider divorcing your spouse, or you have a difficulty because you're experiencing domestic violence and you don't know whom to talk to. And he said he and his wife do pro bono work during the weekend. So write to me if you think I can help you, and I will keep this confidential and the rest of that. And so interestingly, he left an email behind, and barely, there was a slide which had his email. And then, he switched off his presentation and he walked away. And, he, with a couple of people did ask the organizers that, can we have his email ID? Can we have his email ID? And I think some people helped and gave them the email ID. On Monday, he was looking all over the place for me. He said, I want to talk to Dr. Banerjee. And finally, later in the afternoon, I did catch up with him. And he said, you got to see this, I have 34 plus mails in my inbox from our women, and they're all issues of domestic violence. And they're all asking to be able to have. These were qualified, English-speaking, urban, educated, with an identity, employed, financially independent women. Most of them earning a fairly decent salary. And if we had 34 out of 600 who reached out to him, his big question was how many more would have not, because this is the place of employment. So I think having shared this, I want to turn this over to Adil to be able to ask, Adil, tell us, and I think this is for the audience and for everyone else, that the minute you raise your hand on a woman who is in the privacy of your home with you or in some close place with you, how many sections in the Indian Penal Code do you violate? I just want you to call this out and share this for the information of the audience, and also to remove any ignorance associated with the fact that you have a free hand to hit or beat or kick or do whatever it is that you want to do with a woman who's in your vicinity at home.
So, Sujaya, this entire problem of conspiracy of silence that we are talking about is today actually an outcome of a much bigger, complex Indian reality than what we experience in other parts of the world. Of course, there are those classical cultural, social, economic factors which all of us are aware about. I'm not going to invest my time trying to talk about these factors which all of us are aware. But three particular factors that I really want to call out at this point of time for this complex problem are the three realities of India. Number one is legal alertness. Number two, reputational loss of the custodians of law. And number three is legal awareness. So alertness, awareness, and custodial relationships. All three in Indian conditions have got absolutely deteriorated. Let's talk about legal awareness of our country. Even 30 years after independence in India, for the first time, Section 498 of the Indian Penal Code, after 30 years, was introduced, and that too with very, very limited definitions of what is cruelty to women, and that too there is nothing like harassment simpliciter, which means that if a man is harassing a woman through cruelty with an intention to take away her property, only then it becomes a crime. So if the harassment was not with an intention to take away the property, it would not become a crime. So it is not cruelty at all. So therefore, there was no concept of what is called harassment simpliciter in the Indian Penal Code even today. Let us, again, that was 30 years. It took India practically 58 years to realize that there are many more dimensions to domestic violence than only taking away the property of the woman through harassment and cruelty. So, and which is why as late as 2005, we got independence in 1947. We got our constitution, republic in 1950. And we got this law 55 years later. So you can imagine what harassment women have gone for 55 years for the protection of women for domestic violence act was introduced into the country. Now the Constitution of India under Article 14, 15 and 21 protected, but there is no direct mention of harassment of women.
Your mic's gone mute.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So what we're talking about is that even Article 21, which is talking about right to life, only indirectly through precedented law, that is a court-made law, is talking about right against sexual harassment as part of right to life. So there is no direct right for protection against sexual harassment, even in the Constitution of India. And as I told you, Section 498 of the Indian Penal Code is so limited that it is not even suitable to handle. So now, if actually the law is to be applied, and I can only promise you, the reputational loss of the police, the reputational loss of the lawyers, we have always seen in the Hindi movies, the lawyers who are always more Shylock than the real good guys. That kind of a reputation is prevailing in the minds of the women. So they don't want to go and take help from the lawyers, and certainly don't want to take help from the police. And our legal systems are absolutely not alert. So that is why this awareness through education and softer means is what we need. Today, at least we have a law which provides us a lot of protection, but awareness is not there, and desire to speak up is not there for the socio-cultural reasons we are talking about. Now let's look at the Domestic Violence Act. So this act for the first time acknowledges that a violence at home is a violation of the human rights. So the first time the concept of domestic violence as a violence of the human rights of a woman is being spoken about. And therefore the act was created with an intention to provide more protection. Now, if you are an aggrieved person, now under the Indian Penal Code, only a wife could file a case. But we know of several relations where women have lived without getting married for several years. So if you went under IPC directly, if you are not married, even as late as 2008, the Kerala High Court has given a judgment that if a woman is not married, she cannot be protected under the Domestic Violence Act. Or she can be protected only under Domestic Violence Act. She cannot be protected for relevant provisions of cruelty under the Indian Penal Code. So now the aggrieved person, who is a woman, today is able to provide protection and get for herself in the nature not necessary of marriage. So the relationship has to be a domesticated relationship under Section 2A, which need not be a married relationship. They could be staying together under common domesticity, and that will provide not only for her, but for children, adopted children and adopted family, also the in-laws family in case they are staying together. If any of them are harassed, that provision of protection is available under this act. So number one is that. Second is, what is domestic violence? Let us understand, because half the time as we talk to women, they don't understand what is domestic violence. In fact, the provision is so wide that actually you could put a man away for the smallest possible thing which you can't even believe that is domestic violence. So under provision of Section 2G, which defines what is domestic violence, and Section 3, which identifies the various acts which are identified, I would first of all, if I was one of you trying to explain to the women, please go and just popularize Section 3 and let women know what Section 3 says is domestic violence. So any act of commission, omission, or conduct which destroys these four things. Number one, health, safety, life, and welfare of a woman. And if any of the violations of his behavior causes, number one, physical abuse. Number two, sexual abuse. Number three, verbal abuse, which could be any kind of jokes, any kind of abusive language. Emotional abuse, emotional blackmailing, or economic abuse, which is one of the most important things. So I will not give you money, I will not give you food to buy, I will limit you to the movement of the house. Now there is one particular case we know where the man would go to work all day long and the woman would be locked in the front room, but the problem is that the toilet was in the room that was locked. So all day long, if the woman wanted to go to the toilet, she could go to the toilet only in the morning before the husband left, and rest of the day she had to manage it somehow, but the front room had no toilet. Now that amounts to economic abuse. So if you go into definitions of behavior like the Posha Act, there are so many behaviors which women don't even realize that these behaviors are actually tantamounting to domestic violence under Section 3. They actually can be protected. Only thing is they need to be speaking to a person who is aware of what this is, and certainly they will find a way. Now, what is the action to be taken is very, very simple. The person directly herself, or through any other person, or a neighbor, or an HR manager in a company, or a family member, anybody, and law does not say that the woman has to complain. Anybody on her behalf can go and complain. Now, also remember, this is the first law which brought into effect that if a complaint is made with a fair intention, then the other person, even if it is untrue, will not be penalized if the complaint subsequently turns out to be false. So you can go ahead and make the complaint under provisions of Section 4 and you will not be penalized. So you got to go to the police station, make a written complaint as required under the stipulated format which is provided under the Act, give it to the police. What the police in return will do is, they will tell the woman to go to what is called the protective officers or protection officers who are appointed by the state government under provisions of Section 8. They will write out a complaint in the standard format and refer it to a magistrate first class. And then the magistrate, through the protective officer, will give the notice. Now, the law says that the first meeting with the husband has to happen within 3 days of the magistrate having come to know about it. And then the proceedings to be followed are similar to the proceedings as given under Section 31 of the Criminal Procedure Code. So there is an entire process that is defined. The wide powers, if you want me to answer this later on for paucity of time, I could do it. But if you want me to tell you right now that what are the powers and what are the kind of things a magistrate can do if he finds that the woman has been harassed in any ways, amazing powers he has. It is a matter of you arguing the matter before him. He has a right to give you residence. He has a right to force upon your husband that if you will not give a residence, you get out of your house. He has those powers. He has powers to provide legal services. He has power to prohibit the husband from behaving in the same way again, or he will be jailed. He has powers to say, give alternate living accommodation to the husband, which Shalini was saying, where will they go? If you go through these acts, there are alternate provisions which can be got from the husband for behaving like that. There is no entering the office. So if someone is threatening that I will enter your office and make a big hullabaloo about, our relationship so that you will be socially ostracized in office, you can be prohibited from doing that. You can be prohibited from going into your child's school if you have been very abusive. You will be forced to give compensation. You will be forced to give maintenance. So everything that a woman is worried about can actually be made available under the powers of the magistrate under Section 17.
Right. So Adil, I think that this is all really incredible. And
So I have a question of Adil. Can I ask Adil a question to that?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Adil, how long does it take for all this to happen? I mean, the law provides for it, we all know, right? And that's where the challenge is. That's the reason why women don't go out and complain, because the problem is from the day they complain to the time the resolution will come through, they have no cause as to what do they do during this period. If they go back to that room, they are... or to that house, they are further abused. Sometimes they're not even allowed in. I mean, it's literally locked and you're out, right? So, and this could take anywhere from months to years to resolve. And that's the tricky situation. That's the reason why it doesn't happen. And during this period, it is not, one second, Adil, let me complete. And during this period, it is not just what that person has to go through. Is ostracized, has serious reputation loss, because it's very easy to say that this person cannot go to your child's school and cannot go to your office. I have seen men coming to office and making a whole tamasha around over there. It is very difficult. It's the challenges of operation that really hold women back. And in this period, many times the family members may actually say, why are you going through this? This is worse than what you were going through. Why don't you, have a reconciliation and move on?
Right.
And it happens many times.
Yeah. I think this is a very opportune time to ask my next audience poll question. Suneet, can we...
So, Sujaya, I would love to answer this question at some point.
Yes. Suneet, just hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
Should I answer it now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So as I told you, number one of the classical problems of India is the reputation of our custodians, but we are also victims of the Hindi films. We see many Hindi films where you will see someone like Om Puri or someone trying to be the negative lawyer and experience it. Whilst it does happen, I accept it, but I know of cases where if you really go through the right process, how long will it take? If you get an injunction order within 1 month's time, I will get you the protection you want. Thereafter, you may want to file a divorce. That's a longer process. But within 1 month, immediate relief can be given to you.
Yeah, but I think there is a larger malaise which comes even before that. So we're just going to ask this poll question and then we continue the conversation. Suneet, can we have the poll question, please? And let's try and get the audience involved in terms of responding to this question. Do you believe domestic violence complaints are not taken seriously by the family or the police? do you believe domestic violence complaints are not taken seriously by the family or police? Yes, no. It's not that people are not reaching out to people. There are enough and more instances where they get sent back saying you will lose your family and whatnot. But I mean, the jury's out. If your experience is contrary, which is that you believe the police and family do take this seriously enough and take up the matter to try and resolve it. Rest of the sections that Adil spoke about and the fact that you can get some expediency in terms of justice. It needs a police complaint to be lodged first. And so the question is, do you believe domestic violence complaints are taken seriously at all by the family or the police? Let's have the response on this, Sunil. Okay. You're right. We seem to have 91% saying that the police and the family do take it seriously, and a 10% saying no. Let's come back here. What is the experience? I'm going to come back to Anuradha. You've been doing some activism around this and work with various forums. Do you see a comfort in wanting to go to the police? My own experience with working women who are victims of domestic violence is that they finally, when it comes to, don't want to go to the police. And even if they went to the police, their experience has been that the police themselves are counseling them to say, make up with your husband, don't lose your reputation, cool down, calm down, don't do this, don't take it forward. You lose who's going to marry you again? Once you get divorced in our society, a woman's not going to be worth anything. What are you going to tell? Who's going to take care of your children? Calm down. You'll forgive him after some time. It's your own husband. Kya hai? Apna ghar wala hai. Isme kya hai? And that's the kind of responses that at least we've seen, that they don't even reach a police complaint. I'm a little staggered by the responses, and 90% people here believing that you can actually make the police complaint and go ahead with it. What's your experience, Anurag?
No, I thought, Sujaya, maybe you're not reading the question right and the response right. Read the question and the response. They are saying that the family and they do not take it seriously.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
that's what they're saying. So they're with you on that.
They agree on that. Okay. All right. That's great. Sorry. So you are agreeing with it, and that's great.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm seeing the responses here, because it was framed negatively. The yes is a yes for the negative.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great.
Correct.
Yeah. Great.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. Anuradha, give me a response on this. What's your own experience on the kind of comfort women have? I mean, the laws here, Adil's telling you the law can protect you. There are significant violations here. The man will need to pay through his nose if you actually go down to complain about your abuser. But tell me what your experience has been.
So, Suja, my experience of having worked with women for the last few months only, and I have not been an active activist in this area. But what I've seen is the biggest problem is women themselves realizing that they are being abused. We have to understand that, as teenagers, as young adults, we all live in a very romanticized world, dreaming about having the, a guy in shining armor coming in, staying with us the whole life, and happily ever after stories. Right? The fact that somebody starts abusing you, that itself is a very shocking fact, and people do not accept it very easily. So most of the work that we do is around counseling women to say, do you realize what you're going through, and is it what you want to live with? Right? There have been cases where we've seen that women have agreed to seek help from their families. Families have agreed to help daughters and say that we will support you even financially if required. But the women do not want to do that, because they still have this idea in mind that someday my husband will turn around and start loving me, which is not going to happen. Right? There are other groups of women that we've seen who are mothers who are getting physically abused. Right? In these times of lockdown, where they're getting physically abused and they don't believe that their sons could do something like that. And it's ultimately the son. How can I go to the police for that? Right? So there is definitely, there are certain sections within society who would not easily approach the police. There are certain sections who would want to approach the police. And I think now even the lawyers are getting, very, I would say they're getting educated about this area of domestic violence. The lawyers also are giving that much opportunity to women to take that decision as to what they want to do. And even if there is support, I've seen a lot of times women back out rather than police or lawyers wanting to influence them negatively and not wanting them to put a complaint, right? So yes, in certain cases we've seen police also act like that, but more so, I think there is a need of, and that's the work that we do, is to counsel women to say what is the next step and how do you look at yourself. It's your decision first of all. Yeah, whether police takes your complaint or whether you want to go back is ultimately going to be your decision. So if you're not strong enough and you don't realize that it's your decision, nobody else is going to help you.
Yeah, good point. I think with that, on that note, I want to go over to Priyanka Banerjee, and I think here I want to be able to ask Priyanka, give me a reaction to the conversation that you're hearing so far. You're a young lady, you're a representation of your young millennial generation, almost Gen Z. What is it that how are you internalizing this? I know that you believe that the previous generations created lots of the malaises in the society, but I want to know how it is that you're viewing this and how are you reacting to this, especially as a filmmaker and someone who's been a voice against violence towards women. I want to get your reaction on everything that we're talking so far, including your reaction to whether or not you believe that this deserves a complaint, and for you to be able to activate the law, like Adil said, and bring people to book if they are violating or insulting, abusing, humiliating women in this manner. So please go ahead, respond to this, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So absolutely, I mean, as someone that's, I think, so much younger, who hasn't ever been in a marriage really, possibly at this point only has some experience with dating or kind of interacting with the opposite sex in that manner, I think it absolutely deserves a complaint. I mean, that's a no-brainer for me, for someone from my generation. But I think having said that, one of the first poll questions really interested me, which was about what happens when educated and employed women are still not using the advantages at hand and, not complaining or not trying to find ways of getting out of the situation. Because the no-brainer for any of us is that someone that lacks options will not step out of the situation. But with someone that's educated and that's employed, you always feel like they do have a plethora of options. So why aren't they getting out? And I relate to that more because I think a lot of the women in my generation, my peers, etc., are all going to be married women that will be qualified and that will have a job and will be financially independent. But I do feel like there are a couple of factors at play, in the sense that, number one, I think even if you're educated or employed or having those privileges, it's seen as mutually exclusive to the expectations of the patriarchy. So even if I'm somebody that has studied or does have a job or who is doing well, I'm not exempt of the fact that I have to be married, that my in-laws must be pleased by me, that I have to be in a relationship where in some form or the other, it does serve the male counterpart. And those are seen even as I'm growing up, or if I see with my friends or my peers as well. We're not really exempt of a lot of the patriarchal conditioning that the previous generation had. Even if we are given the leeway to go and get an education and to go pursue whatever we love, it is still considered a tragedy if we don't find a man, if we don't stay with that man, if we don't make it work. So at some point there is a dichotomy in your head, because you feel like, all right, I'm getting to do this part that the women before me didn't get to do, which is I'm getting that franchise, I'm getting that way forward, but I still have to keep up with this part, which was what was going on earlier. And I think that is constantly the tussle in your head. And that's possibly why someone who from the outside is looking empowered may not be able to finally go forth and take that empowered decision to make the complaint, because they still feel like it doesn't matter at the end of the day, no matter how successful I am, if I haven't made this relationship work, it's going to feed further back into my perception as that successful woman that couldn't have it all, or that, or that person that, who kind of pursued whatever I wanted to do at the expense of my relationship. So I think, that is kind of the dichotomy a lot of people my age at least are dealing with, from what I understand, and which is probably why they wouldn't come forward and, make the complaint, even if they've got all the resources to do it. The other thing could also be not feeling like you'll finally have the approval of your family and, or even just the support of your in-laws. I mean, even the women on the side of your in-laws can understand as a woman, right, that what you're going through is horrific. but I feel there is still a doubt somewhere about whether you will get the approval from both sides. And it's not with everybody. I think it's changing a lot with people my age, but I think it still exists. There's a lot of shame to do with not making a relationship or a marriage work, no matter what the reason is. I think that.
Yeah, I think
very well put. Very well put, Priyanka.
Very
Can
good.
I add one more thing?
Yes,
to it?
yes.
You know, when you look at, there is 1 in 3 women that is facing that, right? So what happens is there is that 60% or 70% of relationships that are going well, that are happy, that have that the companionship, the equality that is looked at. You know, some of us are fortunate to be in those relationships, and we know how much they mean, how much they matter. That aspiration sets in as well in the third one, the number one that is going through it, to say, I may be able to change. I'm educated. I am logical. I will be able to, you know, I come from that strata. I come from that family where I'll be able to change this. I will make it, the transition into the other side well, right? Then the other thing also comes is, if I open up, if I tell people, will I be judged by my peers? It's very important, especially at a younger age. You know, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, your peer matter a lot to you. What your friends are going to say, how they're going to behave with you matter a lot. And slowly this whole reporting thing keeps, changing. The goalpost keeps changing for it. And by then it is so many years of it that you've gone through that you're now in that situation where you're neither ways. It is too late to report.
So Sujaya, I wanted to come in for a minute.
Yes, yes.
So I did not want to be going wrong or misunderstood on the record. I'm an absolute family person. And I generally believe that whenever family problems, disputes, etc. could be reconciled, there's nothing better than that. You don't have to go to the police station the first time. But then a time comes in certain violent marriages, in certain abuse situations, where you have to find solutions. At that point of time, if the lady or the woman doesn't know what are the solutions, is not able to be out. In fact, I'm telling you, India faces a peculiar problem of illiteracy at two ends. The women are illiterate about their rights, and the men are illiterate about the penalties.
Yes.
The day we have made some of these men aware of these penalties, I have seen them crying like babies.
Yes. Good point.
I will not
Good
only
point.
just make them aware, but make them, if we see a few of them going through the pain of, if there are those examples that are there, many, many more will resolve automatically within their
I
homes.
can promise you, not some. I can give you 100 examples, but these will all be privacy matters.
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a provocative question to ask, and I'm going to ask this to Priyanka. Priyanka, since your generation is so keen to rewrite the playbooks of everything, right? What is your reaction to the fact that maybe domestic violence is a personal matter between two people, and if someone doesn't mind being hit every now and then, it's all right. Why should we have to go and pull in the law and the police and the rest of that? What's your reaction to that? I'm just saying it's another form of liberation and equality, where if a couple decides this is the way they want to behave with each other, would you agree that it's none of anybody else's business? It's up to you if that's the kind of relationship you want. And I'm simply saying this because I do see your generation wanting to rewrite many playbooks. And I know you're lamenting, saying that your social sanction comes from marriage for women. And no matter how successful you are, you're still expected to make your marriage work. But I'm going to ask you this question, which is, do you think that you can rewrite this playbook to say up to people if they want to be abusive in their relationships?
Okay, so I won't just kind of state what I think about it. Like, I'll also look at how a lot of people around me think of it. I think other people my age, there are absolutely people that are in toxic relationships and toxic marriages that ended up making it work till the end and were there because they got familiarized with that cycle and they were okay with it, and they eventually kind of were fine with it. But then having said that, with any human rights violation, standing in arms against, it isn't happening to them, it's happening to somebody else, So if you look at what's happening right now with the entire civil rights movement in America, or if you look at what's happening to the to George Floyd that recently happened, I mean, it's happened to somebody else and it could totally be their problem, and you don't need to kind of make it your own. But then there is that sense of, I think, civic sense that everybody has, and you do end up feeling like a lot of people are okay with certain kinds of abuse because they don't know better. So to that extent, you do want to come in and participate. I think everyone in my generation also will absolutely, if somebody is getting, abused in a relationship, nobody just stands back and says it's their problem. We do want to intervene. But having said that, you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. So if they have decided that this is what they want to do and this is how they want to live, then there's only a certain point beyond which they will even welcome your intervention, after which you will become the enemy, which is not ideal. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
All right, let's ask the audience.
Sujaya, I'd like to add something here.
Yeah.
In our society,
one second. Sunit, hold on to the audience poll. Anuradha wants to speak.
Just one thing. When we talk of social revolutions, we wait for tragedies to happen before social revolutions start off. We're not looking for creating a society that is intolerant to such behavior. It's ultimately a civil society. We're working and living with each other. If there is something that we want to live like, and if there's a code that we want, that code needs to be followed by everybody.
Yeah.
Why only a few neighbors, and why not the 25% who are being abused right now?
Yeah.
And that's
Good
the
point.
question.
Yes. Let's ask the question to the audience. I'm keen to be able to. Shalini, I'll just come back to you. We just take this question with the audience. It's in the same thread. So, Sunit, can we ask this audience question, please? Number 3. So do you agree domestic violence is a personal matter between husband and wife, the abuser and the recipient of abuse? You think this is a personal matter? It's none of other people's business whether whatever people are doing in the privacy of their own homes. Yeah, yes, no, take 30 seconds to answer this, please. Okay, can we have the response, Sunil? Okay. So most people agree that it's not a personal matter. It matters to everyone. We want a woke society that reacts to injustice, and we want a woke society that reacts when some other fellow human beings being abused or hurt, and that maybe the individual does not understand, is ignorant to their own rights, don't know or don't have help. So that could well be the scenario. So I'm going to stop here to be able to take in Shalini's reaction to this. Shalini,
Sujaya, it is a crime against the state. It is the crime against the state. It cannot be a personal matter if someone is physically beating someone else.
And it's a human rights violation.
Right.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to share a personal experience in this one.
Yes.
So I was about 28, 29 years old. I was working in Africa. And across my home, there was a colleague of mine who was a Chinese couple, just a husband and wife, and they were very young. They used to live there. And very often in the evenings, once the husband would come back, there would be loud sounds that would come off, some form of quarrel or fight that they were having. And I had a feeling that the girl was being abused. I think I must have heard it about for a month or so, and I just couldn't resist. So one fine day, I heard the same sounds. I opened their gate. I walked into the room. I just opened the door. The door was not locked. So as I walk in, there is the woman is below. The man is on top. He's hitting her, and she has scratched him with her nails all through. So he's bleeding on his chest. And I just stood there and I screamed. I said, "You cannot behave like this over here." I don't know what all I said. And I told them I'm going to report it, and I walked out. Okay. I came home. The first thing that everybody said to me is to say, "Are you out of your mind? What if they had attacked you?" It was, anything could have happened. 2 hours later, I saw both of them walking hand in hand and taking a walk around. And I genuinely felt foolish. I'm sharing my own personal.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Till date, I'm not able to put this thing in my head to say, did I do the right thing or did I do the wrong thing? I left the country. They were still there. I don't know what happened to them or their life, but for the period, and we were there for another 3 years. So for the 3 years, I saw them there day in, day out. And I still haven't been able to. But I still feel that somewhere I feel deep down that maybe I did the right thing. Because it lessened.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear it. Maybe it still happened, but at least I couldn't hear it, right? And if you remember, there was this beautiful ad by Piyush Pandey, Ring the Bell. I think the only thing that it does is at least it disrupts for a second. There is some form of a break in that happens.
And
where some kind of judgment can prevail that can come.
And it's amazing.
I think we should. We should intervene. We should intervene.
Right, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because I can see on the chat as well, some of the people are raising this on ring the doorbell. And it's amazing that this communication came out around the same time when I was working for Lolintas and Partners, and we were living in a building where there was an NDTV anchor who was our neighbor, and both of us sort of exchanged our experience of this yelling and screaming and shouting that used to happen from the opposite flat. And every time this happened, they would just simply go there and start ringing the doorbell. So, my husband and he would just go start ringing the doorbell to just kind of stop, and it would stop. All the shouting, screaming, everything would just stop. And we finally did get the society to speak to them. But, what's amazing is how that voice went down. The instances of this happening went down. And automatically, when they knew, everybody could hear outside, because a lot of people are not aware of what all can be heard outside. And so I think they get carried away in the moment. And I think this kind of created this embarrassment, and it very significantly stopped. So we've actually experienced this ring the doorbell, which very significantly reduces kind of violence. I want to be able to quickly do a round robins with all of you. We're heading towards the end of the conversation. I want each one of you, and Ansu, we'll start with you, is, in the audience, is there anything that you'd like to give out? This is also going to be up on social media and on YouTube and the rest. So put a message out there from each one of you to anyone in the audience who's struggling with this, or anyone who's experiencing this during the lockdown. What is your message to them? And, and of course, we will call out some helpline numbers at the end of this, which people can share with their friends, relatives, anybody else. But before we come down to the message, one piece that I wanted a reaction on, and I'd love to invite Anuradha, Ansu, Shalini, anyone to be able to talk about this. Why do you believe that in India, mostly women who are struggling with domestic violence or any other kind of abuse and violence do not have a first level of defense with their own families? So I want to be able to, their own family and friends, there appears to be nobody available to help them. So how does your friend land up in a maid's house in the night? And when she does decide to leave her husband, I want to be able to call up.
The family was, in her case, the family was overseas, but she just had to spend the night. And she actually mentioned that. She says, once I took the step, then there were so many people that helped. A friend came and took over, but it's so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, okay. But notwithstanding that, by and large, people find that they're pretty much alone on this journey, especially when it comes to their own families. And my heart's always gone out to the fact that the people you should reach out to the most don't have compassion for their own people at a time like this. I mean, even to reach out to the law and to have the courage to go through this entire process with the police and the rest, what is the reason for parents not being, or close friends not being support system? Oftentimes it's the friends more than the parents. I want to talk about the family a bit before we do the last round robins. Any reactions? What have you all seen? What is the reason why the family is not coming forth?
So I want to start with this thing, and especially when we speak about educated women, and we talk about these women who are able to influence major decisions in the companies that they're running, etc., and they find it so difficult to influence anything at home. First of all, and just let me connect it to something that Priyanka also said. I'm probably from a generation before her, and like she mentioned, that she's now standing at the cusp between two things where she has the freedom and yet she doesn't have the freedom. Let me tell you, for the generation of women who just started working out, who just basically got the taste of all this, they have so much more to lose. And that really keeps them totally bolted in, because there is no way in which they can kind of just stand up and talk about what they can't handle at home, right? I mean, imagine the kind of repercussions that it has on their career, on their social network, on their everything else that actually is their escape mechanism from the whole thing. Right. Now, this is actually an extension of that, because they aren't able to speak so much. A lot of times you know, when you try to involve the family, when it has reached an absolute boiling point and whatever, because, you know, they are starting from point zero over there. You have reached point 100, but they are actually starting from point zero. So for them, you are at your 7th case of getting beaten up, and they're saying, calm down. Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So that happens a lot. I mean, the thing is that the longer you try to handle it yourself, the more difficult it becomes for people who are actually able to support you to do anything at the right time when you need it.
Yeah.
And while we say that, you know, nobody comes forward to support, and again, I think parents these days are far more, you know, protective of their daughters, and, you know, will probably tell their daughter to actually not, you know, stand anything like that.
Yeah.
But so I think what we're talking about is a little archaic. But I think if any woman now finds the courage to stand up and speak up, she will find so much support. And she will find that there are so many other women who are suffering from similar problems.
Right.
Actually coming up and saying that, you know, yes, this happened. Yes, this happened. People will open up where you never imagined that something like this could have happened. So
Right.
I believe there's a lot of support. The thing is that you have to figure out these red flags, and you have to stand up right in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, don't
Good
try
point.
to
I think
you first of all, you don't try to dilute
continue
yourself.
tolerating it. Yeah. I think very good point. So I'm going to now, and I know I want to take a few questions, and we're at the fag end. We already made this into a 90-minute session. So, you know, can we do a quick round robins, please? You know, just one last thing that you want to leave the audience with on this theme, especially considering that many people who may have joined in have friends or perhaps have relatives or themselves are struggling with a challenge like this. What is the one message that you'd like to leave with women who are especially struggling with domestic violence in the lockdown? We'll start with you, Anuradha. Yeah, we
Sure.
make it really crisp so that we can move fast.
Absolutely. Yes. I think one of the things that women should be very conscious of is creating a trust circle around them. If you have a good circle, and during times of these domestic violence, people are so underconfident that they let go of their circles. They do not want to interact. It's important that you continue having a trust circle who you can go back to when the need is higher.
Right. Adil, what is your last comment with this group?
So not only a marriage of equals, but no relationship of equals has any space for power games or any kind of violence. Wake up before it is too late. Wake up to a new sunrise.
Thank you. Priyanka, what is your message to the audience?
My only message would be that if I'm speaking to a woman that is going through this or thinks she might be, experiencing it, know your worth. You don't need to be a celebrity or anybody extremely special to know that this is not something you deserve. And you're not a rehab center for a badly brought up man or woman. You don't need to change them. You just need to get out of there. So, yeah.
Nice. Good point, Priyanka. Shalini, say something as...
I would say that, I would encourage them to seek, if you can afford it, seek professional help. Because that gives you a very safe environment to first equip yourself. If your self-esteem is low, if you are going through, you're as it is in the bottommost of it. So it equips you. And second, they help you understand they prepare you for the actions you want to take. Because not everybody can walk out. It's easy for us to say that, but not everybody can, right? But at least they understand, and it prepares them to say, okay, this is what I can do. And second thing I want to say is no individual has the right to violate another individual. And no individual should take violence by another individual.
Good point, Shalini, and very vehemently put, and thank you for saying that. Ansu, we let you have the last word. Yeah, one message that you want to leave the audience with.
Yeah, just very quickly, do not let it go, to the level of beating and all that. Draw your own boundaries right at the very beginning. This is not something normal as, bullying or something. Let's not try and normalize this by calling bullying or even abuse. This is actually, it is now termed as intimate terrorism. Yeah. Somebody screaming at you in a loud voice in a way that it scares you for your life, for your safety, is intimate terrorism. Do not tolerate this right from the beginning.
Good point. I think very good point. I think with that, I know there's lots of questions, but I'll take one or two. Sometimes there's Parminder saying sometimes the women do not want to complain because they don't want the husband to be punished and just want to use it as a measure to warn him. Do women have that kind of resource as well? Adil, I'll ask you to answer this. Can you only warn the man? They don't want the man to be punished sometimes. That's what Parminder is saying.
Try warning him if you succeed good enough, but I have my grave doubts after some point of time. Haven't we always had some or the other small fight with a neighbor and we say, I'll go to police, I'll go to police. You never go to police and the guy also knows you will never go to police. So if it works for you, well and good by threatening him. But beyond the point, when it becomes too much, you'll have to actually go to the police.
No, I think they mean can a warning be given to the abuser by the police, not to arrest him. Of
course. So please, for God's sake, don't misunderstand me. Yeah. Police will make all possible attempts through the protection officers to provide you counseling, bring you together and all of that. Yeah. It is only when they find that this is becoming too much and it may cause the life to the person, that's when they start interfering with the criminal codes and laws.
Right. So I have a suggestion, and this is directed to you, Adil, which is it possible at all that since Indian marriages have a lot of rituals during the marriage, do you think it's high time for us as a society to create some form of a contract around violence and violence towards each other and the consequences of that, which get also shared with a man when he marries a woman? I mean, both of them sign up to be able to kind of understand the law at that time, since they don't seem to know it. And, everything's just lovey-dovey and mushy-mushy and grand Indian weddings. The recommendation here is, you think this law can be shared with husband and wife at the time of marriage?
Sujaya, the Christians and the church has an actual ceremony where before the marriage, the boy and the girl are brought together. They are told about how should you live together happily and build a family. And they're also made aware of the laws. So that's a very, very good process to make them aware that, well, do all the positive things, but if you don't do, you better know the consequences of what you will end up getting penalized for.
Absolutely. So I think this has been a great, superb, conversation. I'm hoping that from all the effusive comments I'm already seeing in the chat box, I think that people have really found this conversation really engaging. I think this conversation is incomplete without us being able to, and I know we are at 5:28. I perhaps ask everyone's permission to only exceed this by 3-4 minutes. I just want to leave you with what are the helplines that are available should you want to share this with an extended community. This conversation is serious. This conversation has serious consequences for both partners. This is an extremely saddening part of our society. So before I go to that, one last audience poll, all right? Suneet, can we have the fourth audience poll up, please? So put it up and let's ask all of you a very important question. Do you agree protesting against this behavior is necessary to build a civilized society of equality and respect? Do you agree protesting against this behavior? And I must tell you here that even when we announced this webinar, we've had people write to us saying that this is fake news, that violence has increased in the lockdown, that why have you all taken a theme like that? We're surprised with it. And some people who believe are in denial, saying that this is not a challenge and it's not as acute in our society. Some people even wrote in saying that this appears to be a challenge internationally. It's not an Indian challenge. So, the general view being that the people in the slums and the ones who are in the lower echelons of society are the ones who are hating each other. And that this is not true for people who are educated.
Sujaya, the real Indian challenge is it is much more, but how do you know? Because most Indian women would not have complained.
Yes, absolutely. So, but let's get this. Do we all agree? Why did we even have this conversation? This is the answer to that question on so many people who asked us. And, and also the general denial that we've seen coming forth in terms of even having this conversation. Do you agree protesting against this behavior is necessary to build a civilized society of equality and respect, and not just talk about it, but actually do something about it? Please show us the score, Suneet. So, we still have two people who don't believe the conversation is worth it, but I don't know whether you got the question right. A staggering 97% people saying this is an important conversation to have, and it's everyone's responsibility to create a civilized society of equality and respect between genders, between everybody, equally for the children who become the, the very get scarred actually with the experiences that they have with parents who are violent. So I think with that, I'm going to shut this. And Sunit, if we can just get the last slide of my presentation, I'm just going to, we had a last bit presentation to talk about the actions that can be taken around this time, but I'll leave you with some helpline numbers. So can we just get that up, please? So please stay with me, move forward. Move forward. So obviously there's a need to be able to improve conditions. There are shelter homes. There need to be lots more done for the safety of women. Going forward through the lockdown, the National Commission for Women is trying to figure, is there any kind of, data analysis that they can do around women who are susceptible to violence during the lockdown? And is there an opportunity to be able to help them and to be able to have them have opportunities to live elsewhere? Can we move forward, please? Go to the last slide. Go to the last slide with the numbers. So how do you address this during a pandemic? And I have some numbers up here. This is the Ministry of Women and Child Development numbers. I have the national emergency number here. There is the police, which is 100, women helpline, which is 1091. The domestic abuse one is 181. The NCW WhatsApp alert numbers also up here. The Government of Maharashtra Initiative for Mental Peace and Wellbeing, Samvad, is also here. And also the Central Social Welfare Board Police Helpline, New Delhi, is also up here. So depending on which part of the country that you're joining in from, please make sure you take a note of these numbers and you're able to take this across to women who need it. We do know that a lot of women who reached out to us, even as we were publicizing this session, were women who were experiencing domestic violence as we speak. And so I'm hoping this conversation was a relief to you. I hope that you can take this help to your neighbors or to other people who actually require this. And I hope that this conversation has been therapeutic and a significant reminder of the fact, Sunit, you can remove this, and a very significant reminder of the fact that, we're all responsible for building, a great society, a great country, a great culture. So thank you very, very much, Shalini. Wonderful, wonderful contributions. Thank you so much. I must mention that she's been the inspiration of having this conversation. So thank you, Shalini, for inspiring us to do that. Thank you, Anuradha, for coming forth and saying and sharing with us the work that you do, and also to be able to share your insights here today. Adil, for always being the evangelist and the light to be able to help women and equality. And I think a lot of his pro bono work is not known by people, but he does a lot of that. Ansu, thank you so much. You're a treasure trove. I'm so glad Shalini introduced us. And congratulations. Keep up with the great work that you and Shalini are doing. And let us know how we can help you through the WLFA to be able to support the work that you're doing and to bring in more resources to what it is that you're trying to do. And Priyanka Banerjee, you're always incredible. The way you shared your insights, your sort of the way in which you demonstrated your self-affirmations and the confidence with which you came forth. We have so much of hope for the next generation handling this, this social malaise much better than perhaps we have been doing in ours. So thank you very, very much, everyone. Take care. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm glad we opened it up. Maybe sometime later we'll connect up again to be able to take it forward. Meanwhile, all the panelists, you were lovely. Participants, thank you for the effusive comments and for all the encouragement you always give us by coming and joining in such large numbers. So thank you, everyone, and take care and see you until the next time. You know what? This has been so opportune. We debated whether we should postpone this because of the cyclone. But the cyclone gave it a miss and allowed us to have this conversation peacefully. So thank you, cyclone, for not coming in here. And good luck, everybody. Stay safe, everyone.